school. Well, certainly one can only imagine the unspeakable grief that her parents are going through, her family and friends. Then we have the case of Robin Williams taking his own life through suicide, and what kind of questions that leaves for the people that are still behind. Well, joining us here this morning, two very, very special guests with a totally, I think, new take on grief counseling. A good friend of mine, Dr. Jean Swann, a holistic educator and a former TV news anchor and talk show host, and Dr. Robert D. McDonald, who's pioneering this new technique in grief recovery. Doctor, first off, how would you characterize this as different than past grief counseling?
In the past, the understanding that many people have held is that grief will not end, particularly if it's a loss of a child. It's quite common for grief counselors to say, well, you know, you've had this tremendous tragedy in your life, and you'll never get over it. It's not an uncommon suggestion, or actually directly teaching of the parent or the one who's lost a loved one. What we're doing now is understanding that we have tremendous hope, because it's 21st century psychology, 21st century understanding of how the mind works. We can help people to resolve grief, and we also have them resolve the shocking experiences, such as Zara's recent passing, which what a great tragedy that she passed away, having this fall in Yellowstone. But we have shocking images and traumatic memories, and then grief. So our work is a protocol to help people resolve these things right away.
Now, Jean, when you and I were talking here this past weekend, we were talking about the work and how you came to find the doctor. I wasn't sure that you'd be willing to share your personal story, but it's right on point that you're able to. You lost your son, Chris, within the last year.
Yes.
It was a tragic, unexpected death. And again, as a parent, how initially did you deal with that? And did you think there was any hope of ever coming to terms with it, being able to talk about it?
No, I didn't, Mark. Even being a holistic health practitioner, knowing a lot of healing modalities, interviewing a lot of healers, I thought that I would live with sadness for the rest of my life. I thought that I would do the best I could, but the bottom line was I would be sad as long as I lived. That's what I believed. It was a shock and a trauma. I suffered tremendously, so did my whole family. I was able to, 2 months to the day after losing our son, I met Dr. Robert McDonald and had a session. I was healed of grief, shock, and trauma. Now, I know...
And how long, though? How long did that process take?
The process took under 2 hours, and I was healed. And now, that sounds unbelievable, and I probably wouldn't believe it myself, except it happened to me. And 8 months later, I feel wonderful. My life is fine. I am miraculously healed. I still miss my son, and I still wish he was here and would have preferred a different outcome, but my life is fine. I'm not suffering with the burden of grief. And I know also as a health professional that can lead to degenerative disease when you suffer for lengths of time from grief. People can develop cancer and other disease. So I had that concern as well. So it isn't really honoring our loved one to suffer, and it also causes damage to our own health. Then I wouldn't have been around for my own daughter. And
I know folks are going to want to talk about this. Grief affects everybody that's watching this program. Every single person that's watching experiences grief at one time or another. Your husband, Jerry, is a very, very dear friend of mine. You went to see the doctor first. Doctor, when Jerry came to see you, what was his attitude coming in the door?
Well, he was experiencing the shocking memories, the shocking images of the passing of his son. He was experiencing the traumatic memories, which is images over time, and experienced a conflict about whether or not it was all right to resolve the grief. There's a common belief barrier that stops people from resolving grief.
They think they're not honoring their loved one.
Yes.
They didn't really, they're saying, I didn't really love that person. If I can get over the grief,
That's
I
right.
have to suffer to prove that that person was really important to me. But again, Jean, Jerry came back from one appointment saying, I can talk about my son now, and I couldn't do that before. Yeah. Doctor, in the brief time that we have left, yes. This technique you feel can work for everybody, and not just the loss of a child, but you're having great success with military personnel coming back with PTSD. give them just the 10-second version of what they will experience during that session. What is the key to overcoming grief with your method?
The key to overcoming grief is the recognition that the grief itself doesn't come from the objective facts that someone has passed away. It comes from the way that the person thinks of the person. For example, now, if I think my wife is here in the studio, if I thought of her as having passed away, being dead, and lost and gone and in the past, I would start grieving now. If someone told me this, an authority told me that this happened, I would start grieving. Then if I realized it was a false report, my grief would be over immediately. So what happens is that although I have relatives and friends in different parts of the country, they're not here in the studio. They're somewhere else. I don't grieve them. I can miss them in a minor way, but I don't have that heavy grief that's felt as emptiness and concavity in the chest.
I want folks to be able to get in touch with you, explore this further, and we're going to make that possible through a website connection. Jean, even a bigger picture here, as you talked about the connection between grief and other diseases. You have a health summit that's taking place online.
Yes, the Cure to Cancer Summit. People can go to theCureToCancerSummit.com and hear 30 interviews for free regarding healing from cancer and other disease, and also Dr. Robert D. McDonald will be one of those speakers, and they can hear more from him and many other health professionals who've been healing people from cancer and many ailments.
All right, Jean, thank you so much. Doctor, thank you. If folks want to get in touch with you?
Yes, they can call the Center for New Medicine in Irvine, California, which is 949-680-1880.
The Center for New Medicine in Irvine, California. Yes. They'll be able to find it. Thank you both so much. We'll explore this in greater depth in the future, I'm sure, because, again, it applies to every single person that's watching this show. And I just, God bless you, and thank you for coming in.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Good
Mark.
to see you. Jean especially. Thanks for sharing. All right, let's get back over to Heather, I guess, and see what's going on at the news desk here.
Not sure if he has